great to be in Chatswood again and all these people walking by who need Jesus. And you know what? We tried to start to preach just now. Two young men came up, gave their heart to Christ. It's a beautiful thing. We never mind being interrupted. We never mind being stopped even before we get started if somebody wants to give their heart to Christ. So we're here to preach the gospel. And what's the gospel? The good news that Jesus Christ came to this earth, died for an undeserving, ill-deserving people. Some people are undeserving, some people are ill-deserving, which means they've done these terrible things that don't have any right to the goodness of God, but he does it anyway. And you know what? Jesus said some words it's Matthew 26:13. And he said it as a general principle when you're spreading the gospel, when you're sharing the gospel. And when I saw it, I thought I better take notice of this. If Jesus is saying it, I need to take notice. And this is what he said. It's Matthew 26:13, verse 13. And Jesus said, assuredly. And when Jesus says assuredly, he means truthfully, seriously. You can trust what I'm about to say. Assuredly, I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told in memorial of her. So which woman are we talking about? And why was this woman so important? And how does it relate to the gospel that we're preaching here today? We know what the gospel is: a merciful, gracious, loving God came to this earth, became man, died on the cross for you guys, You can cross yourself. That doesn't do it. You must be born of his spirit. We're going to get to them shortly, but we need to preach the gospel first. So, this is it. We're preaching the gospel. People are looking at me like I'm some sort of strange person, and I am. I'm a peculiar person. Jesus said that we are peculiar people because we're of this world. We're in this world, but we're not of this world. And that's true. Because we are children of the kingdom. We are children of God. Our home is heaven, not here. So yeah, it's interesting. So the woman that Jesus was talking about, it's in Luke 7:37 and 38, the account of it. I'm just going to read it through quickly because it's so important. If Jesus made it important, I want to make it important. And verse 37, Luke 7, verse 37 says this, and behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat and reclined in the Pharisee's house, she bought an alabaster box of ointment and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and began to wash his feet with her tears, and did wipe them with the hair on her head, and kissed his feet and anointed them with ointment. So that account in Luke, why is it so important? Why did Jesus make such an issue of it? Why did he say it was so important? When you're preaching the gospel, this is the example. This is what he was saying. Now what can we draw from it? This woman came believing God. She became believing, and we don't know, the Bible doesn't tell us the story around it, but if we can use our imagination a little bit, perhaps we know she was a prostitute. We know that she had given her body to men for all sorts of disgusting things. And yet, maybe she was walking through and she saw a crowd of people and heard Jesus. Maybe the Pharisees were there. Maybe Jesus was saying, I came for the prostitute and the sinner. I didn't come for people who are so self-righteous that they think they don't need God, that they think their law or their own righteousness is enough. Maybe she heard that. So when you read this, it says, behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, she was a prostitute, when she knew that Jesus sat in the house of the Pharisees. How would she know? You think she was looking? You think she was wanting to seek out this man? You think she looked at Jesus when he was speaking in that crowd, and maybe she said, Here's a man who really loves me. Here's a man who has no sin. Here's a man who looks at me differently to other men, treats me differently to other men, it seems. I want to seek him out. I want to come to him. And she did. She sought him out in the house of the Pharisees. Now think about this. This woman was on the bottom of the deck. She was a woman for a start. In the Jewish world, a woman took a second place, it seems. She was not only just a woman, but she was a woman who was a sinner. She was a prostitute. She was at the lower end of the scale. Yet she walked into this Pharisee's house. God bless you, man. She walked into this Pharisee's house. What was driving this woman? She certainly wouldn't have been accepted by the Pharisees, but she came in. She did not care what people thought of her. She did not care. She wanted to seek Jesus Christ. And this is the attitude that we need to have. We need to seek Jesus. If you are to be born again of the Spirit of God today, you have to have a hunger in your heart. And God does it. God draws you. And God gives you the faith. God gives you the repentance that's required. But there she was. And she bought an alabaster box of ointment. That's what it says. And it further says in some of the other Gospels that this box of ointment was worth 300 denarii. And when you bring that into today's value, 1 denarii in those times was like a day's wages. This was worth 300 denarii, like a year's wages now, like $150,000, a huge amount of money. It was probably all she had. However she got that gain, it was all she had, and she brought it to Jesus. We need to bring all we have to Jesus in our heart, in our life. We need to submit, to surrender to him, to come